I would like to start by passing my condolences to the family of Ms. Tina Jumat Peterson. I'm aware that she might be late to rest soon. I thought it was going to be the weekend, but I think that has not happened. And I will also want to make sure that I raise these important issues and apology in advance as well for the long statement. Kind of long. We will distribute the statement soon when I am in the middle of reading the statement. But the courts are with Ramaphosa. The courts are with Ramaphosa. These are the chilling last words uttered and contained in the voice recording of some of the remarks made by the late Honorable Tina Jumat Peterson in one of her 2 physical meetings with my husband at the Ocean Basket restaurant in OR Tambo International Airport. Good afternoon, members of the media, and through you, my fellow South Africans. I have invited you as your public protector to inform you about definitely the biggest corruption scandal ever to hit the Parliament of the Democratic Republic of South Africa. Sadly, the scandal also implicates directly and indirectly the executive and the judiciary of South Africa. For the first time, we can talk about state capture because all 3 arms of the state, aided and abetted by the media, are deeply implicated in concerted efforts to violate my rights and those of the public I am appointed to serve. I will show that to different degrees, the late Tina Jumat Peterson will still be alive if the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, as well as the ANC-DA alliance, had complied with their constitutional obligations. In a way, all of these institutions killed Ms. Jumat Peterson. I'll start by explaining their role, or the role of each. The executive. In December 2019 and February 2020, Ms. Natasha Mazon of the DA laid unsubstantiated charges against me, which the then Speaker endorsed. On 16 March 2021, the DA and ANC used their majority to vote for the institution of an inquiry into the Mazon motion. More than 1 year ago, on the 9th of June 2022, the head of the South African executive, President Cyril Ramaphosa, abused the powers given to him in terms of Section 194(3)(a) of the Constitution, which empowers him to suspend the public protector. Regarding my suspension, the Western Cape High Court had this to say, paragraph 157 of that judgment. In our view, the hurried nature of the suspension of the applicant in the circumstances, notwithstanding that a judgment of the full court was looming on the same subject matter, leads this court to an ineluctable conclusion that the suspension may have been retaliatory and hence unlawful. It was certainly tainted by bias of a disqualifying kind and perhaps an improper motive. The President could not bring an unbiased apology for that. We were trying to make sure that everyone is accommodated, but now people are joining with their mics on, and this causes a lot of disturbances. Thank you so much. So in our view, the President could not bring an unbiased mind to bear as he was conflicted when he suspended the applicant. The High Court therefore set the illegal suspension aside. I was supposed to go back to my office on the 9th of September 2022 but the DA and the President of the ANC and South Africa lodged an agent application or appeal proceedings with the view to suspend the High Court judgment and to prevent my return to the office. The High Court failed to see through this scheme and refused to grant relief in terms of Section 18 of the Supreme Court's Act to implement the judgment pending appeal. Without the unlawful suspension and disingenuous appeal, I would have returned to my office on the 10th of September 2022, and Ms. Tina Jumat Peterson would probably be alive today. It is noteworthy that the court found that the real reason for my suspension was to avenge the 31 questions I asked in respect of the alleged criminality involved in the Phala Phala scandal. More than a year after the complaint into Phala Phala, the Office of the Public Protector has not yet issued a report. The objectives for removing me illegally have therefore been achieved. Coming to the judiciary, in addition to refusing the Section 18 relief by the High Court, the alleged agent appeal was set down for hearing by the Constitutional Court on an expedited basis at the behest of the President and the DA. It was heard agently on the 24th of November 2022. To date, the Constitutional Court has failed to issue a judgment. The 6 months period, which even non-agent judgments have to be handed down, expired on the 24th of May 2023. On the 25th of May 2023, I lodged a complaint of gross misconduct with the Judicial Service Commission against the 9 judges who sat in the matter. A separate complaint against Chief Justice Zondo and Judge Kolaben will still be lodged in respect of their alleged role in the scandal involving the leakage of a decision of the Constitutional Court to one Ismail Abramjia and the subsequent conduct in sweeping under the carpet what should rank as the biggest scandal affecting our judiciary. It is fair to say that if the Chief Justice and the Constitutional Court judges had complied with their constitutional obligations, Mrs. Tina Jumat Peterson might also still be alive because we wouldn't be finding ourselves in this situation. Even if the judgment can be issued now, it is too late for her. It will also be irrelevant to me. So the justices may as well send the judgment to the universities because the relevance and usefulness is now only academic. It matters not if the judgment will come to my favor or predictably against me, with the illegalities of the President having been sanitized over more than 6 months. More recently, the Western Cape High Court flatly refused to adjudicate the issue of the non-recusal of Mr. Jaji for repeatedly proceeding without my legal representation, even when I was sick, and the inclusion in the committee of the husband of the complainant, Ms. Mazon. 2 weeks ago, the court declared that it may have made a mistake in dismissing that application and granted leave to appeal to the SCA. This means a further waste of time and money on an issue which the High Court was duty-bound to decide but failed to do so. It is against this background that I was shocked by the words of the late former minister about the alleged allegiances of the court. I leave it to you to judge for yourself whether her observations are true or false. Coming to the role of the legislature in the death of Mrs. Jumat Peterson is probably much more direct than that of the executive and the judiciary, although they all played a role, direct or indirect role. 23, Mrs. Jumat Peterson attended the inquiry physically for the first time and only time. She asked one of the parliamentary officials who attends the inquiry regularly, to give her phone to my husband and requested him to punch his number. This can be verified with the parliamentary official consent, but again is a matter of the police to determine and get the name of the official. Following this, Mrs. Jumat Peterson invited my husband to 2 separate physical meetings, both held at the Ocean Basket restaurant at OR Tambo International Airport. At this meeting, she solicited a bribe of approximately 600,000 for herself, Mr. Richard Janji, who is the chairperson of the inquiry, and Ms. Pemi Majodina, who is the chief whip of the ruling ANC. My husband pretended to play along and even negotiated the price to be set at 150,000 instead of 200,000 each. He actually intended to trap the culprits, and he proceeded to record the 2 meetings on his phone. He also insisted that Ms. Jumat Peterson should arrange a meeting at which at least one of the other 2 would attend. This was agreed, provided the conditions in bracket or the payment of the money were met. Unfortunately, the deal went sour before the conditions were met. I'm in possession of both the audio recordings of the 2 airport meetings, as well as more than 90 WhatsApp messages exchanged between my husband and Mrs. Jumat Peterson for the period between the middle and the end of March 2023. These items of evidence have been shared with the police, and the Hawks are currently investigating. Needless to say, had the legislature, the Speaker, and members of the committee discharged their duties in line with their oath of office, it is most likely that Ms. Jumat Peterson would be very much alive today. In my view, if the Speaker had agreed to the confidential meeting I proposed, the late former minister would have been alive. The evidence which we have, ordinarily, the evidence will be left for the police investigation, which I do not wish to jeopardize. However, the investigation is directly linked to my own ongoing impeachment process, and it is in that respect that I have taken a different decision to share the evidence with the South Africans for them to judge. This is also because it is highly unlikely that the biased South African media can report objectively in a matter which has the potential to hurt the agenda of the DA and or the President, who have already launched an appeal with the Constitutional Court. Already the mainstream media, with the exception of independent media, has done everything in its power to discredit my version. The Daily Maverick even went as far as to declare that Ms. Jumat Peterson died after a long illness, despite the fact that she was addressing Parliament a few days before her unfortunate death and was campaigning for the deputy presidency of the ANC Women's League. Such desperate lies represent the dominant view of our embedded media. Yesterday on 702, one of their anchors even went on to suggest that the bribery allegations were part of the tricks which I and my legal team had played in the past, without substantiating what these tricks may be. It is therefore in the public interest to release the evidence now, lest the investigations will be dragged on for years, like the Pala investigation by various state agencies, such as SARS, SAP, the Hawks, and Public Protector South Africa. The WhatsApp messages, which speaks for themselves, are attached to the statement. The 2 meetings lasted for about 1 hour altogether. The main parts of the audio recordings will be played to the public when I finish reading the statement and before the question and answer session. Read together with the WhatsApp messages, this should put it beyond doubt that there was solicitation of bribes in a corrupt manner in the eyes of any sane and objective observer. However, I expect the media to spin the undeniable truth away or find creative ways to cast doubt on the evidence. 10 of the key statements articulated by Mrs. Juman Peterson include the parts where she stated, among other things, that there is a predetermined outcome for my impeachment and that the ANC Chief Whip, Ms. Phemi Majudina, is the one who instructs the members of the committee on what to do in the committee. A project manager has apparently been assigned to the project. Both Mr. Janji and Ms. Majudina were very angry that they were not made ministers and therefore prepared to frustrate the impeachment process by delaying it until the end of my term of office. But upon being paid a large amount of money, in fact, they were prepared to delay if we are paying them that large amount of money. She had met with Mr. Janji and he was prepared to extend the inquiry, and Richard, well, I'm quoting, Richard was angry because he did not become a minister. And then also further quote, Ms. Majudina was particularly angry that the president chose Nokolo Ivit, who had forged a master's degree certificate. They wanted to know tomorrow if the deal was on or not. Number 3, my legal team, especially Advocate Mpofu, must raise points with the aim of delaying the process and go on another attack. That's a quote as well. Number 4, Cyril Ramaphosa was desperate to make an offer, but I must resign. We should talk this to these people, but have two-pronged approach by also pursuing her proposed approach of bribing members of parliament. Number 5, she had never attended the inquiry physically, but did so because my sister was there, with whom she was previously very close. Number 6, she had gone to see Richard, in brackets, because they had both worked for Cyril at the recent ANC conference held at Nazareth. She had saved Cyril at Nazareth and stood against Nomvula, and he also did not make her a minister. Number 7, Mr. Skosana must not tell me, as the public protector and Advocate Mpofu, about the proposed deal, but keep it between the two of us, in brackets. She also said that her career would be over because she would have accepted a bribe. Number 8, Richard Janji had changed and was no longer hostile to the public protector. That's what she said. Number 9, we needed to demand an audit of the committee members' attendance because, apology for that, we are trying to make people to access the meeting. Okay, apology. So number 9, we needed to demand an audit of the committee members' attendance because sometimes they were sitting in 2 or 3 meetings at the same time. And 10, Mr. Skosana should make an offer, in brackets. She can also be heard saying, how about 200,000? Phemi is greedy, the ANC is dead. However, the most concerning remark from her which stand out for me was when she observed correctly that this process will kill me. To that, my husband agreed and added that if it were for him, I would have resigned months ago to avoid the agony, but that I had insisted on getting the opportunity to tell my story, which is true. He also expressed frustration at the technicalities and the hanging and undecided court processes. The significant reaction from Mrs. Jumat Peterson was, but the courts are with Ramaphosa. She repeated this chilling statement twice. As already indicated at the beginning, it is this remark which should be of concern to all South Africans, stated by an elected representative of the people from the ruling party. The WhatsApp references, when these recordings of the meetings are considered together with the WhatsApp messages exchanged between the two persons, then the issue is put beyond any doubt. What is significant is that Mr. Skhosana was insisting on a meeting with any one of the other two recipients of the bribe. Ms. Jumat Peterson asked, open quotes, how must I get them there if they have conditions, close quotes. To this, Mr. Skhosana replied, open quotes, I'm ready for the condition, close quote. The discord occurred when Mr. Skhosana was angered by the rude behavior of Mr. Jantshi on the 4th of April 2023, when he ordered that I must be muted after having agreed that I must take the platform. He threatened to call the press conference and expose the entire scheme. Ms. Jumat Peterson discouraged him from doing so and warned that this would be bad for everyone. She also said, open quotes, I am very sorry that you want to destroy me because of your anger. In May, and upon learning later about all these shocking revelations from Mr. Skhosana, I advised him to report the matter to the police. Thereafter, I proceeded to write a confidential letter to the Speaker of Parliament requesting an agent meeting so that I could blow the whistle on these large-scale corruption allegations within the institution, which she heads as the de facto CEO. She completely refused to meet me and referred me to the Ethics Committee instead. As if that was not bad enough, she went on to issue a media statement revealing my confidential and attempted protected disclosure of corruption without even giving me a warning. Such conduct violates everything we know about treating allegations of corruption against those who hold power over a whistleblower. It encourages victimization. As a result of the above, on the 5th of June 2023, I lodged two separate complaints with the Ethics Committee. The first complaint is against the 3 members of Parliament named above for extortion, bribery, and corruption allegations. The second complaint is against the Speaker for her unlawful conduct described above. In addition, the WhatsApp messages have been shared with both the Ethics Committee and the Section 194 Committee in the context of Mr. Jantshi to recuse himself voluntarily from the chairpersonship and or membership of the said committee. On the deadline of 12 June 2023, Mr. Jantshi refused to recuse himself. This issue has since been referred to my personal attorneys to take up this matter with the courts. It is truly incredible that Mr. Jantshi, the NC, DA, Freedom Front, Plus, IFP, and ACDP all insist that Mr. Jantshi should continue to chair the committee under these serious and tragic circumstances, and when he faces such allegations. With the attitude of these parties, we will never defeat corruption in this country. Thankfully, many members of the public, as well as members of the committee from the EFF, UDM, ATM, and to some extent the Good Party, have not bought into this pact of corruption led by the ANC and the DA, and they continue to call for Mr. Jantshi to step aside. It is also disturbing that last night at 8:20, my attorneys received a letter from the Registrar of Ethics Committee expressing that the committee take umbrage to my intention to hold this media briefing. Further corroborating evidence is that, lastly, I wish to highlight at least 3 of the facts which additionally and independently confirm some of the revelations made by Ms. Jumat Peterson. Firstly, she stated in March already that there was plan and an instruction to shorten the proceedings towards open quotes, the desired outcome, close quote, by no longer affording me an opportunity to complete my oral evidence, but switching to written statements or affidavits and shortening the period for closing arguments. Last Friday, 9 June 2023, Mr. Jantshi, reading from an externally prepared document, announced exactly this. The plan was clearly generated outside of the committee. As she put it, open quotes, that's what they told him, close quotes. Secondly, Ms. Jumat Peterson had indicated that one of the reasons Mr. Jantshi requested to be paid a bribe was that he might be kicked out, while he wanted to be the ANC chair of the Western Cape province. 2 days ago, the Sunday Times named 3 contenders for that position. Top of the list was Mr. Richard Jantshi. This was exactly in line with what she had said about the current political ambitions of Mr. Jantshi, whom she described as a close ally, and she even said, open quote, my man, close quote. Thirdly, Ms. Jumat Peterson had referred to a conversation she had with my sister in the corridors of Parliament, which she also has also been confirmed. She indeed knew my sister from her previous position as the Minister of Agriculture. We wrote energy by mistake, we should have corrected that. Any person who still believes that all this evidence could have been dreamt up or manufactured by me or my husband needs their heads to be examined. Even the most biased or stupid person will tread carefully in the face of such overwhelming and mutually reinforcing evidence. As the Public Protector of South Africa, whose task is to support our constitutional democracy, I call upon all freedom-loving South Africans to rise in one voice and join me in demanding that 1. Mr. Jantshi be removed from chairing the Section 194 Committee, pending the outcomes of the criminal and the parliamentary investigations, or that the Section 194 Committee be terminated with immediate effect, as it is now irretrievably and incurably tainted, poisoned, and clearly driven by a predetermined outcome. The inquiry is therefore a deliberate waste of taxpayers' money, which can never withstand any proper legal scrutiny. Number 2, the Speaker to be suspended for exposing a whistleblower and refusing to arrange a meeting involving allegations of corruption as requested by the Public Protector. 3, the President to be called to account for abuse of power in implementing a clearly illegal suspension. 4, the Deputy Public Protector must release the Phala report by the 7th of July, which will be 1 year after the statutory 30-day deadline set in the Executive Members Ethics Act. The matter is not at all complicated and could have been finalized within 3 months the worst. 5, the Judicial Service Commission to expedite the complaint into the undue delay of a judgment involving a serious matter of the illegal suspension of the Public Protector of South Africa by the head of state to cover up his Phala alleged criminality and launch an investigation into allegations of systemic bias and the selective leaking of a constitutional court judgment concerning the public protector. If members of parliament can be involved in seeking to corrupt the public protector of all people, what hope can we still have in this democracy? If the whole president can abuse his powers to cover up for his own alleged criminal conduct, what is the purpose of our constitution? Why is the country keeping quiet when an independent panel led by a former Chief Justice found a prima facie criminality on the part of the president? We, the people, may not be able to revive the life of Mrs. Juman Peterson so that we can all get the answers, but let us make sure that her death is not in vain and that it provides us with an opportunity to cleanse our society of the endemic corruption which has apparently gone into highest level of every arm of the state and our society. It is never too late to fix our country. Now is the time. If we fail, there will be no country left to save for our generations. So we are distributing the information pack. The state, Mr. Skosana, my husband, has already opened a case, so we won't distribute that. But then there are a transcript of WhatsApp messages which were sent to the police, but the parliament as well, and it was already there on the public forum. The complaint which has been lodged with the JSC, so that you can understand what the complaint is all about, and the relevant transcript which deals with the issue of the time frames of issuing judgments. The acknowledgement of the complaint by the registrar of the Joint Ethics Committee. So some snippets of the recordings will now be played, and I will take questions after that. If necessary, more recordings will be released in the public domain in the near future. Thank you for listening. So we will just show few recordings, not all of them, because there's still more information and more has been given to the police.